The 2023 Cup Series playoffs have been nothing but chaos. Kansas and then Darlington before that, where drivers who had troubles find themselves in a bad spot heading into the cutoff race at Bristol, including former series champion Martin Truex Jr. Hi, everyone. Alongside Nate Ryan and Kyle Petty, I'm Dave Burns. Welcome to Motormouths and our discussion of where we are going into Bristol. The four below the cut line include Martin Truex Jr., Bubba Wallace, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Michael McDowell. But you may as well count Kevin Harvick just above the bubble, +7. And then, everyone above that isn't exactly safe. But let's focus on those bottom four guys. Nate, you've been watching them out of round one, having seen them the first two races, Darlington and Kansas. Who do you think has the best chance to advance out of that bottom four?
I think that Truex probably has the best chance to advance, Dave. I mean, obviously, he's got the smallest deficit to make up in 7 points. He hasn't run particularly well at Bristol, but obviously it's been such a great season for him, just a horrendous start to the playoffs. So I like his chances of getting out. Bubba Wallace, I think in 8 Cup starts at Bristol, he's only got a best finish of 10th. Stenhouse has run well at Bristol, but I don't see it for him and McDowell because I just don't think their teams have been there the first 2 races. So I think Truex probably has the best chance of getting out of that group.
Yeah.
KP, you agree with that?
You know what? Listen, how can you disagree with Nate Ryan? I mean, let's just be honest. But
first thing, yeah,
I'm gonna head down a different path. I'm gonna go with Stenhouse, and this is why I'm gonna go with Stenhouse. As a driver, once upon a time, the last century, who had a couple of tracks that I really enjoyed racing on. Somehow we just performed better at those racetracks. We just upped our level of play. Whether it was me, whether it was the team, it didn't make any difference. We were good at Rockingham, good at Dover, good on the road courses. There were places that I could go to, and I knew they would stop my slide. I think Bristol is that type of place for Ricky Stenhouse. Now, the difficult part is the competition that he's racing against. Remember, as we go into these playoffs, they're only racing against those 16 guys for points, and it's really, really tough to make up points. He's in a must-win as far as I'm concerned, but I do believe this is a team that could squeak in there and maybe win at Bristol.
So, Kyle, you kind of led me to my next idea here today on Motormouths, and that is who has a handle on Bristol and who should be worried about this track this weekend. I think you've already mentioned Stenhouse, good handle on it. He's got to perform, but who else may have a handle on it, or who needs to be worried?
Listen, I think everybody below the cut line's got to be worried. There is, because it is such a tough place to make up points. We saw it last week at Kansas. It's incredibly simple to lose points. It is really tough to make points when you're racing against the sharp end of the stick, when you're racing against the best of the best, and those are the 16 that are in the playoffs right now. So, I don't really look at anybody. I don't really look at anybody. And Nate mentioned Bubba. Bubba doesn't have much of a record there. But, Chris Buescher has won there. Kyle Busch has won there. Ryan Blaney runs great there. Brad Keselowski runs great there. I saw William Byron pick up the car and put it on his back a couple of years ago, move forward in the points. I mean, these guys, all these guys, we can go through everybody that's 12th forward, and they are not bad at Bristol. Bristol is a good racetrack for them. So the weak link in this chain is Bubba Wallace when you really look at it from his past history.
Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, I think anybody who's, not 30 plus points to the good at this point should be worried. And so that Brad Keselowski, William Byron, Denny Hamlin, the only guys who are in that position. I think you start Ryan Blaney 6th in points. He's 25 up. I mean, KP mentioned it. He runs well there, but if I'm Ryan Blaney, Kyle Busch, he's tremendous at Bristol, but coming off a disappointing Kansas and a disappointing start to the playoffs. I mean, Chastain, I think, is raced well, but had the 5th at Darlington, but Bristol is just such a conundrum for some of these guys, and just so much is out of your control. And I think when you look at the fact that they've got a new tire, new compound, new construction, you had a race a year ago where it kind of felt very track positiony, and it seems like it's been that way in the next gen era, where short tracks, it's a little bit more difficult to make up points. If you don't qualify well on Friday, then I think you might be in a deeper hole than you realize if you need stage points. So I think there's a lot of unknowns. I think there are a lot of question marks come in. I think there's probably going to be a lot of nervous people and a lot of pressure on some pretty big names.
So, Nate, you mentioned kind of watch out if you're not 30 points or better to the cut line. That leaves 11. So let me ask you this, Nate. Do the bottom four that we see now, do they remain the bottom four, or does somebody else up there have trouble and change that bottom four lineup?
I think that Truex does make it, Dave, and then I'll give you a name we haven't really discussed yet. I think Christopher Bell, ever since they made this pit crew change, I saw a stat today that the pit crew that was swapped onto Christopher Bell, I think it was third in the regular season in terms of pit stop performance, and now they're outside the top 20 in the first two races of the playoffs in terms of pit stop performance. So Bell, also a guy who's run really well at Bristol, but he's only 13 points up. If I had to pick one team where it just feels like something could go awry right now, especially given pit stops and track position being important at Bristol, and especially given this is the first time all of these teams have raced at Bristol in a year, I think Bell would be the guy that I see Truex knocking out on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the wild card for me is as we go into this thing, as always, the stages. And Nate, excellent point. It is, and to use Nate's word, track positioning. You've got to qualify good on Friday. Your weekend starts on Friday. How many times have we seen it in the first two rounds of this playoff, or the first two races in this round? Guys that didn't qualify up front struggled to get 1 stage point, 2 stage points. But the guys that qualified up front got 5, 10, whatever stage points it was. So I think when we look at it, that's going to be the key for Blaney. That's going to be the key for a lot of these guys, for Kevin Harvick, a lot of these guys, is getting that initial group of stage points, because that buys you a little bit of a cushion. But I'm going to just be Debbie Downer and say nobody that's below the line makes it in. If they run a straight race and everything goes according to the way the world should go this weekend, if you're below the line, Kansas became the cutoff race. You're out.
Wow. A straight race at Bristol. I don't know if we can count on that from everybody, Kyle, but I like the thought of it. And I like the thought of everything we're going to see Saturday night at Bristol when the cutoff race happens at the Bristol night race. Thanks for watching NASCAR American Motormouths, presented by Toyota.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel.